Warning: the material discussed in this show may be sensitive or a trigger for some listeners. Strong language and topics are discussed. We talk with active duty service members and practice OPSEC at all times. You have been warned.
Rochester Winter Parafest is back, March 25th, 26th, and 27th of 2022. Come say hi to Naked and Afraid celebrities Melanie Elizabeth and Trent Nielsen, Haunted Case Files Jack Kenna, Monster Quest Steve Coles, and more. This event has it all: paranormal investigators, UFO researchers, Bigfoot researchers, and even photo opportunities for the kids with Buddy the Bigfoot. Oh, okay, adults too. Come on down and get a tattoo from Ink Master Tony DeVille. There are psychic gallery and individual readings, as well as radio personalities, authors, jewelry, makeup artists, and so much more. It's only $15 per person, and children under 10 are free. March 25th, 26th, and 27th of 2022. For more information, go to WLFE-DB.com. Yes, Winter Parafest is back. Valley Oak Event Center, Geneseo, New York, next to Denny's.
The Bipolar DM, Jason Cottam. His show talks about Dungeons and Dragons, indie writing, and living with a mental illness, in particular bipolar disorder, borderline disorder, and major depression, among other diagnoses. Check us out right here on Saturdays, 7 p.m. Eastern, also on WLFE-DB.com, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. So take a seat, sit back, and get ready for the Bipolar DM.
Welcome to the Bipolar DM show. I am your host, Jason, and this is a show about Dungeons and Dragons, indie writing, and living with a mental illness, in particular bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, and major depression, among other diagnoses. If you want to get a hold of us, we do have an email. You can reach me at thebipolardm@gmail.com or visit my webpage, www.thebipolardm.com. There you'll find previous episodes of my podcast, links to my live show and previous episodes of that, as well as resources on indie writing, Dungeons & Dragons, and mental health. You can also be sure to check us out on Facebook as well. We have a Facebook fan page. The handle is at Bipolar DM. This is a little bit more up to date than my webpage just because it's an easier platform for me to work from on the go with my phone. I post videos and articles and other postings about, Dungeons and Dragons, mental illness, and all that. And try and keep up on that on a daily basis. That's also a great way to get a hold of me too. For fans of the show, if you are a fan of our show, you can get a hold of our fan page, which is our group page, which is called The Bipolar DM Nation. And this is more of a behind-the-scenes look at how the show goes on, kind of how the sausage gets made. And I do live updates, kind of relating what my life is on a daily basis, living with a mental illness, and other little goodies and stuff like that on there. So it's free to sign up. All you have to do is agree to one rule, which is respect everyone. If you're able to do that, we won't have to have 10 pages of rules in order to get in through the front door. You can find us live on WLFE-DB.com, as well as Stream TV under the channel Variety Unlimited. Be sure to check out our other shows that we have on WLFE-DB, such as Carpools and Coffee with Lindsay, Just Cindy, Real Talk with Dom, The Creepy Parlor, among other shows that we have. A lot of variety out there. If there's something, if you don't like one show, check out another one. We have tons of them out there right now, and more shows being added every single day. We are a proud supporter of the Safe Space. And for those of you who are not familiar with Safe Space, we're a virtual place for people who are having problems can go to, whether it's bullying, depression, suicidal thoughts, or any of that stuff. We're not psychiatrists, we're not therapists or anything like that, but we are here to listen and we don't judge. So if you are having problems, we have resources for you. Just contact us. Go to WLFE-DB.com and click on the Safe Space button, which is very prominent on the page. And there you get hooked up with some resources that you could use if you are going through a crisis right now. We do have, hold on a second. Sorry, I just got a message from waiting on my guest. Sorry. All right, good. Just heard from my guest, so I was getting a little nervous there. She's coming on in just a minute. While we're waiting for her to step into the StreamYard, I wanted to talk about the Veteran Podcast Awards. If you go to veteranpodcastawards.com, let's see. Sorry about this. Just doing a little. Okay. Yeah, I'm just talking to Tammy right now. She's about to get on. If you go to veteranpodcastawards.com, there, if you're a veteran and have a podcast or have your active duty military, this is awards for you. There is 19 different categories. Get on there right now. It is 2 a.m. in the Middle East right now, so my guest is just now getting on. Bless her heart. Registration for the Veteran Podcast Awards is from now until July 31st. So if you want to register your podcast, there's a couple of things you got to do to get vetted. The two major ones is that you need to have a proof of military status, whether it's a redacted DD-214, brown card, blue card, or VA card, or anything like that. The other thing is your podcast needs to be on Apple Podcasts so that they can vet that you do have a legitimate podcast. So be sure to check that out. Voting begins August 7th until September 10th, and then the winners will be announced on October 5th, 2021, which is Military Podcast Day. So be sure to go ahead and do that. And let's see, double check. Okay. Trying to do two things at once here. All right. In news and noteworthy, we have tomorrow the Bipolar Dragons. That is a spinoff show from here. We have been doing Dungeons and Dragons on here while we spun off and started our own show called Bipolar Dragons. It's Sundays, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find them on Facebook Live at Bipolar Dragons. Is where the main place that you can find them. You can also find them on my Facebook page at Bipolar DM, or YouTube, or on Twitch TV as well. So we got that going on. I got some new equipment coming in. I'm waiting on another webcam so that we can also video minis during combat and stuff like that. So really excited about that. That should be coming in this week. And so that'll be available for next week's show. I have a Patreon account as well. So if you are a fan of this show and would like to support us, we are on Patreon. And if you go to patreon.com/bipolardm, you'll find us there. We have several tiers of support from $5 going up to $20 a month. Lots of goodies for each level. So at $5, you get to extra content. We're working on getting stickers as well. So we're going to have those made. So those will be made available as a goodie at the $5 level. At the $10 level, you get that. Plus, there's the Bipolar DM button. So we have buttons made. So we have that. And then at the $20 level, not only do you get the button, the sticker, and the extra content, but we also have T-shirts as well. All right, Tammy is on. That's awesome. If you are also just wanting to buy the T-shirts and stuff like that, we do have a store available. The store is at Bipolar DM on Facebook. And there's the T-shirts are available for $20 each. The buttons are available for $5. Stickers will probably be $5 too when those come available. So check out our store, buy something, support the show. Everything that you do goes right back into the show. So whether it's buying equipment, paying for dues and fees that I have to do, or any of that other stuff, that's where that money goes. All right, let's go ahead and get Tammy on here, and let's say hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's 2 a.m. where you're at. I'm sorry to have to drag you out of the rack.
Hey, it's a good reason to do so, yeah?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and introduce you real quick, and your name and where you're at, right? Well, where you can tell us where you're at.
Sure, I can say. Tammy Terrell, and I am living and working in Bahrain, Middle East, one of the GCC countries.
Okay. And what is your clinical background?
I have been a licensed professional counselor, supervisor for going on 25 years now. Since 1998, I've been licensed in Texas and overseas to do work in general, but I work with our active duty and family members here.
Okay, so that's your current assignment is working with our sailors and their dependents?
Well, we've got all the branches. We've got many countries here, so not even just sailors. And over the years, I've worked with every one of the branches. I was a therapist that traveled and assigned to bases all over the world, different branches for 3-6 months, a year. So I feel like I have a pretty well-rounded experience with our precious active duty and their families.
We really appreciate what you're doing and everything and the service that you're providing to not only to our active duty, but also to their dependents as well. What kind of work are you doing with them right now?
Well, let me just say it's an honor. I always feel a little bit of guilt, and thank you for honoring what I do. I've heard it also said from our active duty members, they're not sure what to say when they're thanked for their service. Yeah. And because you're just doing what your passion is, right? And what your heart is. And so the same here. Yes, I get paid, but it's from the heart, especially with the families who I could see them pay quite a price for being military, but there's also so much beauty and benefits that I notice with families of active duty as well. What I do is, I guess it hasn't changed a whole lot over the years, but I am present available for our active duty, their family members, when they need to talk to a therapist and work some things out. Often that's related to, won't surprise you and your audience that it is related to, people assume when they're not active duty that it's all about that 4-letter acronym PTSD or TBI or any of that. A lot of times that may and does exacerbate the situation, but oftentimes it's the things that stress us out. It's everyday stresses. It's how to deal with command. It's how to deal with the overzealous people in our lives or our coworkers, or, one of the number one reasons I see men in my practice is often, situations with women too, relationship stress, things like that. Not that different from civilian world, just in another country while holding a gun.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm a military brat, a Navy brat myself, so I do know about the stresses of deployment. My dad was gone a lot, especially during the Gulf War. He was gone for 2 years straight on a long cruise, and but also moving around all the time, changing locations, and a lot of the stress unique to military families and what they go through. Now, one question I do have is, have you noticed how has the military's attitude changed towards mental illness over the last few years?
Oh, wow. That is a loaded question. I started working post 9/11 as a military therapist in 2006. And even then, compared to when my dad also was active duty Navy, it's changed in exponential ways. For one thing, sometimes just verbally or just the intention is put out there to support our active duty, but I feel like they're doing a pretty good job of following up on that and supporting not only active duty, but their families. For example, the job that I did in 2006 for up to 15 years was we literally would be boots on ground on a base, both stateside and Oconus, and we don't keep records. So the active duty member didn't have to worry about this being on their record and coming back at them. And we could provide up to 12 sessions, non-medical sessions, to assist them with whatever issue they needed to deal with. And you go anywhere in the world on any base and you're going to have these type of therapists there, which is great because you don't have to worry about going to behavioral health and getting that on your record. You don't have to worry about going for Navy, Fleet and Family, or Air Force, AFRC, and being in the system. They are wonderful services to our active duty, those departments and stuff. But if you feel safer coming and talking to someone who's licensed, who never keeps a record, it's beautiful. So I feel like the military and Washington, DOD in general, are really trying to be there and support our active duty to help the mission.
Yeah, even since I've been out, I was out in '99, and I've noticed a remarkable difference in the last 20 years with the treatment of mental illness. I was treated pretty badly in the military. Basically, I was broken, and they had no use for me, so they put me out. Just for asking help.
About what years was that, Jason?
96 to 99.
Okay.
So
pre 9/11.
Yeah, pre 9/11. At that time, too, combat medics were not recognized as getting PTSD unless they were in combat, but that has changed in 2002, I believe. Okay. And so that allowed me to be able to get on disability and to be able to live my life again without having to worry about work and stuff like that, because I can't hold a job. I've tried. I keep trying.
Of course.
Yeah. But to have that support, though, again, with the VA and stuff like that has been phenomenal. And also the change in the attitude, especially towards recognizing that, we get hurt and there's invisible wounds that need to be treated just as well as the double amputee or the gunshot wound or anybody else. And so
you're right. And the stress is higher for the unseen. I do quite a few shows on that myself with the disability that can't be seen. And I have a brother, which you may or may not ask about, that has mental illness and also a Navy vet as well. And he does amazing things.
Yeah, we're going to I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about your family history too, because you have an amazing family history as well.
Thank you,
especially in relations to mental illness. Let's see. What are some of the struggles? I mentioned some of them, but what are some of the common struggles that military dependents, especially overseas, face?
Well, it's hard for me to see before COVID, to be honest with you, because it's brought its own set of issues. But with the spouses, I think what we run into is, for example, someone who received the same training as I have, gotten their bachelor's, their master's, and even their doctorate in psychology or counseling. If you're overseas, you cannot pursue your internship hours. That means you got all of that education. And in my field, without that 3,000-hour internship, you're not able to go forward and get licensed and to pursue your career. And so a lot of the spouses struggle with this, male and female, where they've gotten what they can done. But if you're overseas, it's really difficult to get the internship hours done and complete what you have started and put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into. So some of their struggles of having to quote unquote give up a part of their lives in order to support their active duty member. I also work with the
the sacrifices we make, and because we do make sacrifices as dependents as well, and especially during deployment and wartime.
Absolutely. I work with the children. I work with adolescents. I work with, I don't now, but historically I've worked with like the child development centers, the school age centers, the teen centers and things. And, their stresses are very real. Now that's before COVID. COVID has brought out a whole level of anxiety, OCD, agoraphobia, where they're afraid to leave their homes because just having returned from the U.S. again, it's such a difference. And of course it depends on where you are, but I can say almost across the board with all the countries I've been in, even in the last 2 or 3 years, since COVID, it is taken very, very seriously, seriously, even to the point of anxiety and OCD about it. And so just the trip here coming back, it was already a long flight, but it took an extra 6 hours just with all the paperwork that had to be completed. The 2 stops stateside and the one here, I didn't think I was ever going to get here.
I was monitoring your trip back too. It was, it's an ordeal.
Ooh, and the recuperation, yes. But, you sign up for that, right? I mean, just what you do. But COVID has added other measures, and across the board, the trends that I'm seeing with our pre-adolescents and adolescents is, they say that first, children, when they feel anxiety, they cling to you. But pre-adolescent, adolescent, when they feel anxiety, they cling to their friends.
Yeah.
Well, with COVID, at least here in a lot of the countries, there's been no school. I mean, they just started back in school maybe a month ago. It's been out 15 months.
Oh, wow.
And these kids have gone to, a majority of them have gone into video games, and that's beautiful and it has its purpose, and it actually increases the dopamine in your brain. And that's why they cling to it, because there's a level of depression that's going on and they're self-medicating without realizing it. Everything in balance is a good thing.
Yeah, especially the social aspect of video games nowadays, especially with online games and stuff like that. So they do get that social aspect too that they're sorely lacking.
Well said.
Connecting to other people. And COVID hit me pretty hard with the isolation, so much so that I ended up having to get a service dog just so I could leave the house. And
I'm so glad that you got one, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, that was like pulling teeth just to get a letter from the VA. It
is.
I mean, even I've known people that are double amputees, blind, and still struggle to get that stupid letter from the VA. And the VA actively says they will not give letters out right now. I mean, it's going through Congress and the powers that be and the VA system about expanding the service dogs availability to service members for PTSD and other psychiatric problems. But you know how Congress moves and how the VA system moves. It's slow and low. So
very slow and low. Well said.
Yep. All right. Yeah. Did you have anything to add?
I think mainly, and with the children, like the babies and stuff, their own anxiety of the clinging, and parents, at least here, they've had to take the role for 15 months of being the teacher. And that has been incredibly stressful for families. But I don't know if we'll give a chance to get into this, so let me say this now, that what I have found over the years is so much beauty and benefits to being, a military child, military adolescent as well. Like what I notice, Oconus anyway, is that this kiddo can come in to a new country, new school, and because the kiddos are so used to new kids leaving, coming, other people going, they're so accepting. Like you can be in what would be considered in civilian schools to be the nerd or someone who just, dances to the beat of their own drum. That won't be immediately received, but in military schools, it really does embrace.
Yes, and I noticed that in my own childhood too. Whenever I come into a civilian school, how I was treated versus a DoD school overseas.
Absolutely.
And so I did notice that a total difference in how I was treated by, the civilian punks, versus the other military brats. And it's a real thing. Let's go ahead. We're going to break for commercial real quick. And then when we pick back up, we're going to talk a little bit about your podcast and your family background and stuff like that, and mental illness in general. So let's go ahead and hey, Kevin. Yep, we got Kevin on there. Good friend of the show.
Hello, Kevin.
Yep. All right, so let's go ahead and go to commercial. Welcome back, and for those of you who are just joining us, we're on the line with Tammy Terrell, who is right now a civilian. I like to say civilian contractor. That's just how I was brought up, but a civilian employee.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so working with our active duty military and their family members overseas right now, providing therapy and counseling. A great thing that you're doing. Now, you also have a podcast over there, too. Let's go ahead and talk about that. What is the name of your podcast and where can people find it?
The podcast, let me first tell you how it started.
Yeah.
When I started this position, I got the opportunity. I do the Ask the Therapist radio show on AFN here, Armed Forces Network, that goes out to Bahrain and Naples, Italy. And I found that I loved it so much, just getting mental health topics out there, stimulating people's thought, letting them know that we were available for them, that I fell in love with it and decided that I didn't get to talk enough. On the radio show. So that birthed Texas Desert Rose, because I am from Texas, and the state flower is the yellow rose. So Texas Desert Rose was born at about 5 or 6 months ago, and you can find my shows under Clear Source Radio on Spotify, iHeart, and iTunes. And I do it started out as mental health shows, but those have kind of morphed into interviews. I know a lot of people do interviews, but my overall mission is I want people to feel and see the other side of what people walk through, struggle with, not always a struggle, what they live in, their lifestyle that we typically in general judge. I want people to feel and hear the other side.
Okay, that sounds awesome. I've listened to a couple of your shows. They're great, especially the front porch shows that you do.
Thank you.
When the garbage man comes up and the dogs start barking, and
we call it the chicken shows. Yeah.
So those are great, and it's a great thing to do. And how often are your episodes? Is this a weekly thing or?
Yes, I try to, our weekends here are Friday and Saturday. So I try to do recordings on Friday, and they're usually out by Saturday or Sunday over the weekend.
Okay. Now, what are some of the challenges that you've run into in keeping your content fresh?
I haven't been doing it long enough to be a challenge so far.
That's going to happen.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. And the stuff that's fresh is usually the accidents. So it's coming. I am blessed to know quite a few people, both professional and personal, that, the ideas just keep coming, and I'm sure it will come, and I'll probably redo some shows, whenever I just can't come up with a guest or don't have topics. But, in the mental health world, there's always something,
Oh yeah. I mean, I have yet to run out of material so far. So,
Oh, no. And there's always newer things to stimulate the old ideas, right? So,
right. So, I mean, I've had a podcast for 4 years now. So I've been doing that.
Wonderful.
So I've been doing that before I started the live show. And now I'm starting to recycle some of those old topics that I had touched upon in my podcast show, because my podcast was only like 15 so minutes long. So,
sure.
So it was long enough to touch on a lot of topics, but not really go into depth about them. And so really looking forward to hitting on some of those old topics like dating and mental illness and stuff like that. And, yeah, I mean, it does become a challenge after a while on whether or not, you can keep the content fresh, keep it going and stuff like that. And there is those challenges. And what are some of the benefits that you have found personally with podcasting?
It's totally selfish. I love the idea of being able to educate and share my experience, strength, and hope, and what I've walked through, including the things that I've messed up. I mean, there's probably more of that. There has been the successes, but out of that is birthed learning. I love the idea of that. And in my head, I've got thousands out there listening to me, right?
Yeah.
So
captive audience.
Yes. And so, and I love this idea, like the interaction. Hello, Jillian. I love the idea of people being able to comment and to call in and to express. I honor that. I'm hoping to get that type of situation set up as well.
That would be great. Let's see. Now, I know you're still pretty new at this, but since it's fresh in your mind, what are some of the things, whether it's things to avoid or things to do, what is some advice you have for somebody who wants to get into doing podcasting?
Well, I had heard you need to have like 20 shows queued up and ready to go. I haven't hit that, and I find that I'm more excited at the idea of what's next. So I've never really had, except from the radio show that I do, which I take material from that to use on the podcast. But really, maybe I should, but I haven't stressed out about banking shows in advance and stuff. I like the thrill of in the moment. I suspect you do too, since you do a live show.
It is quite different. It was a little bit of an adjustment from a podcast where I was just by myself talking to a live show. And due to the nature of my illness, I do have a couple shows in the can just in case, or not just in case, for when I can't broadcast. So, I mean, I don't know about having 20 shows, but I got at least 2 or 3 good shows, set off to the side that I can broadcast for when I have a mental health day and can't do a show.
Brilliant. Yes.
So
I think to me, that feels like a sufficient safety net. I may find out the hard way it's not. We'll see.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see. Oh, let's go ahead. I wanted to talk a little bit about your family history with mental illness, because you have a very amazing story when it comes to that, from not only your brother, but also your dad as well, and some interesting stories, because at the time that my remembrance is that at the time he had bipolar, but was undiagnosed because of the timing of when it had happened, or when he lived.
Well, let me give a little bit of back history here. My father, God rest his soul, he died in 9/18, 9/18/86, and it was ruled to be after his death, posthumously, he got the 100% disability rating. And what that allowed was, at that time, there was Chapter 35, Chapter 31 benefits. And so I had already started college. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. I just knew somehow I was supposed to be there. And all my life, I get this intuitive sense and I follow it. And luckily, and a lot of people can relate to this. And this was one of them. I lived in a 3-university town in Texas. And and college students were all around me. And I didn't know how, but I was supposed to go. Nobody in my family had ever gone before. And so I just showed up and signed up. And I'm like, okay, I can't live on student loans because that's me. I won't allow it. I'll get too anxious about it. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go to this one semester and see what happens. Well, right after school started, my dad died of cirrhosis, a long-term illness from how he coped with his mental illness we'll go into was with the use of alcohol. And that's how he died, related to his anxiety disorder and all of that stuff. So again, he got the 100% disability rating, which allowed me to go to college and get my undergraduate taken care of. My brothers too, they didn't choose to go, but it was such a conflicted gift. It was beautiful, but it was a conflicted gift. And so part of my working with military now is a giving back of what I was able to do, because if I hadn't got my undergraduate paid for, I would not have gone to my graduate program. I would not have gotten licensed and become a therapist. And I got the opportunity to go and work for a few months in Okinawa where he was based. And that meant a lot to me to be able to do that. So my father was diagnosed. Okay, what I was saying on my podcast was that the term bipolar was never, it came into existence in the 80s. And so when I'm growing up with him, his behavior, we all thought it was because of alcohol. You drink, you act crazy, you do crazy things. Makes logical sense.
Right.
And so basically what happened was finally he was diagnosed through the VA and able to get, some medication. He was never consistent on it because his mania was a lot of fun until it wasn't. So it was always an uphill and downhill ride with him. But what happened is, I guess to me, I don't look at anything as an accident. It trained me. It trained my soul of how to deal with the ups and downs and to be adaptive. And that serves me very well today. His diagnosis was bipolar 1, bipolar 2, psychotic features. And there was definitely some manic behavior. I don't remember him ever really having a consistent employment. I didn't understand why. Certainly through my own therapy and some epiphanies and awareness, it has opened my mind and helped me go into forgiveness. I work on that all the time, but I have definitely actively worked on that because the only way to find a good therapist is to make sure they've done their work and on their grieving process. And as luck would have it, I've got 2 brothers. I think both deal with, one I believe is bipolar depressed. My younger brother is the almost identical carbon copy of my father. And he also chose alcohol and at times drugs in order to cope and to calm his mind. The doctors have been pretty stumped. His cycling is pretty rapid and difficult. He's a veteran and thank goodness was able to keep his benefits, and it's served him very well over the years. He's now in prison due to many DWIs. But he is, he's a very good soul and he helps people all the time. I'm very close to him. And so, yeah, that's kind of my whole family has mental illness all through it. But that's my closest connections to mental illness.
Yeah, and one thing I've been wanting to talk about on my show is the other half of mental illness, which is the caregiver / family member, spouse, and stuff like that, and what they go through, because oftentimes they're overshadowed by the mental illness, and people forget about them, forget about what they go through. And so it's really important for me to shed a light on that as well, to, show that, it's not just us that suffer, but also the family members as well. I've seen it in my own kids and how they've had to deal with my mental illness, and
Sure.
it's caused some problems in my family and stuff like that. And we're working through it. But yeah, like I said, it's really important to me to show the other half, the people that also, they didn't ask for it, but they have to step up and be a caregiver sometimes. And it can be really scary, especially when you don't know what's going on, when you don't have the education behind you to explain why. One of my favorite stories that you tell is when your dad took, what was the tax refund check and started a sticker club or something like that.
It was often with bipolar, I'm not sure if you struggle with this or not, Jason, but often with bipolar and the mania, there's a huge religious element to it. And my father also often with bipolar, high IQ, very intelligent. So is my brother. And let me tell another story too. My brother, he's so intelligent that he has read and reads the Bible multiple times. He has a lot of it memorized. And I've seen him completely drunk, almost falling down. He would go toe to toe with a pastor or not a pastor or anyway, and he'd be able to meet them passages of scripture. I mean, and easily, because that was his thing and is his thing. And my dad was the same way. So my dad created what was called the Crusaders, and it was a religious sect in his mind. And he was going to, and he spent all of his time making the drawings, trying to, recruit his friends, recruit everybody to this for God. And our tax refund check came in, and, we struggled. We were poor, very, very, I don't want to call it poor, poverty for sure. And so, you live for your tax refund check, because my dad didn't get any benefits really back then, and not from the VA or anything, except for being able to go to the VA hospital. Right. And so when that check came in, he got to it before my mom did. And he took it and cashed it. And it seems like, no, we're talking 1970s. So I think it was well over $1,500, which today would be about $5,000, $6,000. And spent it, probably even more money than that today, actually, and spent it and created, it was beautiful. I wish I had a sample of that sticker. You'd asked for it, but I wish I did. I'm going to actively look for that. But he created, I think, 10,000 stickers and went all over town, putting them on, poles and buildings, and going to recruit everybody to the Crusaders. And my mom was so devastated because she's waiting for this money, to pay bills, to get clothes, to get, it was pretty devastating. But he felt very resolute in what he was doing. It was his higher calling in his mind.
Yeah, and that is a common feature for us, is that we get hyper focused on something, whether it's religion or a project of some kind. And when that mania starts feeding into it, it's like you can do anything, and damn be the consequences. They're not even on the radar, the consequences of what you do, until afterwards when you have the fallout and realize what you've done. And so there's a lot of guilt and shame associated with that too, because especially when you pour your heart and soul into a project just to realize that you've totally screwed over your family, your friends, or whatever. And so, it's really, it's very much a double-edged sword when we're talking about mania and becoming hyper-focused on something like that. Now, your brother, the one that's in prison, he's doing some great things while he's there, which is an amazing thing that God's doing in his life, is he's helping out other people. And that is an amazing thing for him to do in the situation he's in. And so can you elaborate a little bit more about what he's doing, where he's at?
I appreciate you bringing that up. He's very special to me. He is a very wise soul. I think he is, let me think, 54. I believe he turns 50 this July.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's easily one of the older ones in prison. And that affords him some respect, luckily. And they call him Preacher Man, or they call him Old School, because he is and has and will continue to guide people who are struggling. And he is really a blessing. And so what I shared on my podcast is that the way I uplift him, and I absolutely believe every word, or I couldn't say it, and he would know it anyway, right? If I wasn't being completely genuine, that if God was going to put someone, help people in prison, how could he do that the best way? Well, he's going to put someone in there with them. And so that's how he gets through his days, his weeks, because of some of the training and the classes he takes. That unfortunately means that he's in one of the highest security prisons, and it's very much a struggle for him in some ways. And there are times when we just talk, and because he is able to call me, thank goodness, and I can remind him of what his purpose is while he's able to share what he walks through there. So he's really a blessing to a lot of people in there, but he has to turn a blind eye to a lot of things. Easily during this COVID thing, they have been locked down, and that means in your bunker getting brown bag meals 3 times a day and not getting to contact anybody. And finally, when that was freed up, he's working in the law library there and has copious amounts of coffee, which is his total panacea. Like he feels like I'm as close to heaven as I can be while in prison, and getting to bless people that way. But he still sees people commit suicide a couple times a week sometimes. And so the mental process of that.
Totally rough gig. And then your other brother, if my memory's correct, he's currently homeless right now, correct? Or am I getting my stories mixed up?
It's okay. The one I interviewed on my podcast, her brother is homeless.
Oh, okay. It was her brother. Yes.
Yes.
And he was doing some amazing things too. Same situation as your brother in jail, is that he was able to come to where people are at and help them out too. And it was an amazing story as far as the things that he has been doing as well, and helping people who are, fresh onto the street, where to go, where not to go, who to hang out with, who to stay away from, stuff like that, and helping people survive. And so there's some amazing stories coming out about, using how to stay safe, but also using what God's given you where you're at to benefit others, instead of focusing on what was me and this is what's going on in my life, but instead focusing outwardly on other people. So,
yes, there's always, it really gets hard to see them. I think we all know that, but there's always blessings that come from it. I will say it's probably how I grew up. A lot of my dad's friends were mentally ill also. I didn't know that. I just knew that some of them had sadness in their eyes as a little girl, but I always felt safe. And today, the people that I'm most comfortable with in my professional life, they struggle with mental illness, and it's not because I'm trained. It's how I grew up. That's my comfort zone.
Yeah. So we're coming towards the end of the show. I want to thank you so much for coming on and for the sacrifice you made of sleep and jet lag and all that, because you just came back from stateside too. So you've had a lot of time yet to recover.
It's an honor and a blessing.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to add or talk about before we tie this up? We do still have about a few more minutes. Also in the audience, if you have any questions, shoot them our way, and we'll be more than happy to answer some of those. Let's talk a little bit about bipolar. I know what it is. People have listened to the show, are familiar with it, but what is bipolar?
Well, bipolar is a biochemical imbalance in the brain. It can be something that you're born with, nature, or through circumstances you walk through, which is the nurture. That's what they call that. It can be either or. So you could be born with it and come to it genetically, like my brothers, or you can. It's through the things that you've walked through in your life, also. But even both, really.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a biochemical imbalance. May I ask you, because I know that you're pretty open, Jason.
Yeah.
Is yours genetic or nature, nurture, or both?
Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, mental illness hasn't been running in my family. So really, it was mostly nature on my part, how I grew up, and also some of the trauma that I went through as a combat medic as well. And it hit me at 22, and it was devastating when it hit too.
And it hit all at once, I'm sure.
It did. Literally over Christmas, it hit me. And I thought I was literally losing my mind because I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea why I couldn't control. Yeah, I couldn't control my emotions anymore. I mean, I couldn't do my job or anything like that. And so it was just totally knocked me flat. And then on top of that, to have command chuck me out like they did without any treatment, without any help. It was, my NCOIC was from 82nd Airborne, did his entire career there. And so basically it was like, if you're not useful, we don't need you.
Yes.
And he
that is not that uncommon, unfortunately.
Yeah, he was under that old school mentality of the military. If you're broken, we don't want you. And so they screwed me over and put me out because I could have had a medical retirement, but they didn't give me that. And so I lost out on a lot of benefits that I could have had as a retiree versus, I'm 100% disabled, and I do get my benefits, but I could have gotten more.
Sure. Well, I think it's the blind side, and you found out that you didn't have the support in your blind side, which is another blind side. So it's all over the place. The hard thing about a mental disability or a mental issue is that you don't know what reality is.
Yeah.
And who do you trust to feed that back to you? Very difficult, very different than a physical ailment, not to minimize those at all, but those can be seen. Those can have characteristics. Those can be diagnosed. The mental and emotional are so much more difficult in my mind.
Yeah, because with a traumatic amputation or something like that, you can point right where it's at. This is where it hurts or where it's missing. The mental illness, it's like it's somewhere up here, and that's about as best I can tell you. I don't know what's wrong.
And then you just feel broken, and feel shame.
Yeah, and you're treated that way too, and it's very devastating.
Yes,
so
there's not even words for it, really. I'm hoping one day to be able to write a book, at least from my viewpoint and perception and what I've heard and what I've lived through. But it really is difficult to describe.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other diagnosis I have, which is borderline personality disorder. So I have a very wicked combination of the two. Now, what can you describe as borderline personality disorder?
Well, to be honest with you, I have definitely worked with BPD. It's the reason why therapists have their numbers and their addresses unlisted, because often with with borderline personality disorder, not true of all. Okay, this may not be true of you at all, but often they will come into sessions, and from session number 1, you're the best therapist in the world and you've changed their life, but just as quickly as you're on top of the mountain, soon you're under the water. It doesn't take that long. There's a lot of manipulation involved, a lot of splitting. It can be very difficult. And often with borderline personality, if that's indeed it's an accurate diagnosis, sometimes it's not. Often they get older and they just get tired of the mental games that they play. It's hard for them to let people close. And they do all sorts of manipulation to keep people at a distance, or they'll pull you really, 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 really close and then do something to sabotage the relationship. Mm-hmm. So it ends up with the person feeling lonely a lot of the time.
Yeah. And I've, and I was sort of showing signs of that at a very young age as well, possibly even before I went into the Army. With the borderline personality disorder. And yeah, it has destroyed a lot of relationships in my life. And it's through stuff that I've done, and I don't know why I do what I do. You know what I mean?
Sure. And it that's a nature situation. Yeah. It is. You've walked through hard times. You've had your trust broken in very huge ways. And that it's still not completely understood, at least as of my latest reading, why this occurs, but it often comes to fracturing relationships, and huge trust, often trauma triggers it.
Yeah, especially that sense of abandonment. That is a huge hurdle to overcome, is the overwhelming sense of abandonment and fear of abandonment. And sometimes we just make it happen of self-fulfilling prophecy, basically. And
yes, I'm going to leave you before you leave me, or I'm going to push you to leave me so I don't have to worry about when you're going to leave me.
Yeah, exactly. It makes sense to me. It doesn't may not make sense to everybody else who's normal, but that's how
normal is, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. We're right at the end of the show. So we got a couple of comments real quick. Let's see if we have any questions. Oh, okay. Oh, that's not quails. Those are my finches. I have 2 house finches, and they only come out when I'm on the radio show. Otherwise, they are quiet, and I don't hear a peep out of them. But somehow they know when I'm on radio, on air, and they come out and just chirp their little heads off. So,
well, your vibration increases with this. Yes, they do, Robert. Yes, they do. Robert is a bird fan. I think I can see in his profile pic.
Yes, it is. And I'm a birder too. I love watching birds and stuff like that. And
love them.
I have an emotional support animal, a little dog named Snoopy. He's my ESA. And then I have Harper, which is my psychiatric service dog. And so they have been a game changer for me,
for sure,
having them. And so, okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put you in the back real quick while I close this up. But I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate what you've done. Hopefully you'll have some restful day today after work or something like that.
Off to work.
I know.
So, you guys tune in to Texas Desert Rose if you get a chance. And I love what you're doing, Jason. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and... All right. We're right at the end of show right now. They want to put that up there. Oh, wow. That's a beautiful bird right there. Lorikeets, rainbow lorikeets. Wow. Oh, and thank you so much for listening in on our show today. Really appreciate it. Now, if you have any questions, comments, topic suggestions, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, email me at thebipolardm@gmail.com or visit my webpage, www.thebipolardm.com. There you can get a hold of me, or you can also see my resources that I have. Facebook, you can get through me on Messenger as well, and that might be the fastest way, if not email, to get a hold of me is through Facebook Messenger if you go to my Facebook page at Bipolar DM. Okay. Thank you again for tuning in. Really appreciate every single one of you that is out there and have been watching us. And remember, everybody, take your meds.
Thank you for listening to the Bipolar DM. They love sharing thoughts and ideas. See you next week, 7 p.m. Saturdays on WLFE-DB.com, where our shows are your shows, and that makes for great talk radio. WLFE Digital Broadcast Network is on TV. You can watch all of our shows on WLFE-DB.com. Check out our channels: Paranormal View for all of your paranormal type shows, LGBTQ Friends for all of our LGBTQ shows, Variety Unlimited for all other shows, It runs 24/7 right on WLFE-TV.com. You'll even catch the lives, all in one place. Never miss an episode, past or future. WLFE-GB.com, where our shows are your shows.